Have you ever seen in any apologetic literature anyone address or try and reconcile the fact that Doctrine and Covenants 132, 61 through 65 give us, God gives Joseph Smith 4 requirements for the practice of polygamy or polygamy. First being, first wife has to give her consent, which Emma really didn't. Second one has to be that she can't be given to anybody else. Obviously they were married to other men. Third one being that they have to be virgins, which obviously if they consummated their marriage, they were virgin. Fourth one being that they can't go back and return to live with their original husbands, which they all did. Have you ever seen anybody reconcile that he...
The answer is no, but, a big, very, very big but. I'm familiar with everything you said, and the reason I don't know is that I've read 1 or 2 things that apologists have said, and it's such nonsense, I just don't read it. I just don't look. So it may well be there, but I wouldn't know because I have no interest in it whatsoever. I just think they're idiots. They won't face the truth, and whatever they say, it'll be like Katish if they do say anything. They say, we know this, so it might mean that, and it could conceivably be this, so we're going to settle on this, and you just got to accept it. And people do, and I don't, so I won't read it. It just upsets me. So I'm sorry. Yes.
Sir, could you use the microphones, please? Yeah. The kitchen needs us to go as long as we can, so just...
Oh, okay. I would have spoken a lot slower if I'd have known that. I got tired doing that. And spent 9 months trying to get that into 90 minutes in 2 hours. No. Sorry, go ahead.
My big question right now that I'm dealing with, because I'm newly out of the church, is the apostles today and the prophet, are they liars like, you displayed John Taylor, or do they believe and they are trying to cover up for mistakes that have happened in history?
Okay.
Or what's your opinion on
If
that?
I say anything on this, it is purely an opinion. These are good men. They mean well. The answer is maybe, maybe not. My own opinion, for what it is worth, is that they try as hard as possible to avoid it by telling people to go and look at apologetic material so they don't have to test their own testimony against it. Certainly Kenneth Johnson had no idea as a first born 70 that polyandry had been substantiated, and he didn't care to know, really. He just sent the material on. What Jeff Holland, I mean, a lot of people write to Jeff Holland, a lot of people know of him if they don't know him personally. What he knows and doesn't know, I don't know. I suspect that over the years there have been a number, I mean, when we looked at the one earlier with Richards, with regard LeGrand Richards, he clearly saw that as true and he just chose to ignore it. Whether modern ones do or not, I'm not qualified to say, but they must. I mean, I've sent them stuff. They must know something.
Just changing the topic a little bit. You gave a great piece on the change from monotheism to polytheism in the Book of Mormon, but it always cuts off at 2nd Nephi, and then we switch back to the monotheism. It's like he got stopped. Now, all I'd heard is that it was just around the time of 1836-ish that he was doing this, and so that was during the Kirtland Bank fiasco, too, so he had to kind of run out of town and it was just never picked back up. Why? I mean, but I'm not sure. What's the reason that he just kind of stopped midway in changing the Book of Mormon from monotheism to polytheism?
Well, the Book of Mormon was monotheistic and written and done. It's, I mean, his actual religious attitude.
Yeah, like he had the changes in 1st and 2nd Nephi, but then it stops. You still got Benadiah and stuff. They're still talking.
I don't think he could remember what he'd done.
Oh, okay.
I mean, he changed what he knew he could change, but the rest of it, I mean, I just don't think he bothered. Well, I mean, when you think that Revelation 1:6, he changed in the inspired revision, then he went on and preached the one in King James was correct. I think he got to a case where he just didn't care. People believed whatever he said and what he'd written before. They never looked at, so he didn't need to, as far as I can tell.
Cross-reference was one of his strong
Question. I was actually kind of happy to hear that you were having interactions with Kenneth Johnson and Jeff Holland, and was hoping that could be more of them would be open and have candor. So you started telling the story. Since the time that you've been sending this stuff to them, when's the last correspondence you've had? Did it end amicably? Did they tell you they dust their feet off on you? I mean, what's the current status of your correspondence with church leaders?
The last letter I sent was the one I referred to in my talk, when I got the letter from Ken Johnson saying that we'll have to wait till the next life to find out. They have never responded since. I just stopped after the one I sent about the things I thought were wrong that they were doing. I think Elder Johnson was told not to have anything more to do with me. We used to exchange Christmas cards and it stopped, and he and his wife just wouldn't do that unless they were instructed to. We were friends. And Jeff Holland hasn't responded since. I think once you say, because I said in the last letter, I feel so awful about this, I feel the obligation to publish. I didn't want to do that. I didn't want to be here. I don't want to stand up and be counted. I just seemed to be on a thing that, for integrity, I had to move on. And the writing was my therapy, to be honest. And today is too, to get it off my chest and have somebody listen to me and say, yeah, we've been there. I mean, like the people last night, it's just great to know that I'm not alone. And this is, I've done this for my kids, hoping that one day, the 6 that are active, one of them might think, well, let's see what Dad's done. And maybe they'll, I don't know. But that's the way that it lies. But no, they once you say you're going to publish, they will not talk to you. You're an apostate. You're an anti-Mormon. I don't know what an anti-Mormon is. I don't think there is such a thing. We're all just anti-lies, basically. Not anti-Mormon. They're lovely people. They're just like we were, you know, in a delusional state. Yes, ma'am.
One reason that my husband and I left the church back in late 1970s is we were at the University of Michigan, and we attended Institute, and the Institute directors there knew full well about a lot of these things about Joseph Smith, looking in the hat, and that the first vision was questionable, but they thought that it was completely funny. They would laugh about it. They kept drawing their salaries. They thought it was just humorous, and they laughed it off with my husband, his questions. Mm-hmm. So there are people in the church that know full well of the problems, but they have too many perks. And I think a lot of the apostles may be like that. Yeah. But the other question I had was, has anybody that you know of, any other fellow researchers that you know, confronted them on the first vision?
I think
they need to answer that.
Have.
It's right there.
Yeah.
What would they say? It's one thing about the polygamy, that's pretty damning right there. But that first vision.
I think I was quite naive to even send it in. I think they know everything about it, and they just choose to ignore it. Because they have this inner feeling that it's true, and anything that doesn't gel, they just don't care to think about. They just push it to one side. Just like I did about not believing in God. For 43 years, I was able just to push it aside and not accept it for me and me alone. But that's what, and they managed to do it as well. I mean, the apostles, I'm not going to say they lie because I have no idea, but they are the rock stars of religion. They do jet set around the world. Yeah, they work hard and they only draw, a reasonable living, I suppose. But nevertheless, I just don't think they'll face it. I mean, certainly they didn't respond to me when I was promised a response. And I can only assume that's because of the fact that I said I'm going to publish, and anything they sent me they knew darn well would go into print. So I guess they just draw their horns in and say, well, what they do is they just say, leave it alone, it will go away. Mm-hmm. And I'm not going away. I'm in print.
Truth matters.
It does. Yeah. It does. Thank you for that.
What do you say if they say it's a matter of faith? What's the comeback?
You can't have faith in fiction. Fact trumps faith. That's it. You can't have faith in fiction when it's proven to be fiction. It's like saying, the story of Alice in Wonderland, that's actually true. Somebody will believe you, tell enough people. Fact trumps faith. Yes, sir.
Well, I first of all have a bit of an answer to this lady's question. My uncle Ronald Pullman, who was a general authority, was called to be a general authority. He was a chief contributor to Sunstone magazine. He was my good friend Gene Castleton that used to own Castleton's up here in Salt Lake. They were best friends, and they were all part of this anti-Mormon group. He was called to Salt Lake. He was summoned to Salt Lake with general authorities, and he thought full well he was going to be excommunicated, and they called him to be a general authority. So, say no.
Keep it in the club is what you're saying.
Well, of course he changed his position. They all know. I just think they all know. But my question to you was, I recently saw Gordon Hinckley on an old rerun of Larry King, where Larry King asked him about polygamy, and he did say, "Oh, that was just 2 to 5%."
It's behind us.
And he said, and it was very carefully safeguarded. Now, what does he mean by very carefully safeguarded? Do you have any idea?
Yeah, he's lying. By the time it got to John Taylor, you had to have plural wives to be in office in the church. If a bishop or stake president wouldn't take a plural wife, they had to resign. That was the rule of the church. You had to be an example. So it was managed. It became a principle that had to be obeyed. So